Okay, good day and welcome to this fireside chat session of the newly formed AI ad hoc committee. This is one of our first events and we are very excited about it. And our fellow chair, Jack Lee, has prepared a video for welcoming and presenting our new committee and supporting this event. So if we could please play the video.
Dear IPBA, brothers and sisters, dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. It's my great pleasure to open today's session. As many of you know, the AI Committee was established on April 26, 2025 in Chicago to foster dialogue and collaboration on critical issues in AI. Today makes a significant milestone. This webinar, held on June 26, 2025, is our committee's first ever online forum, and we are thrilled to have such a distinguished group of participants joining us from around the world. We are honored to have with us two famous speakers for today's fireside chat panel. Eunice, Chief Legal Officer from Exaco, also our Chicago Conference Speaker of AI Session, and Ricardo, our Vice Chair of AI Committee and our IPBA Past Officer. AI tools are showing up in more parts of legal work: drafting, reviewing, analyzing. But while the technology is moving fast, the responsibility still sits with us. This webinar is about what that really means. The expertise and insights of the speakers will undoubtedly enrich our discussion on today's critical topic: human oversight in AI decision-making, legal compliance, and practical strategies. As AI continues to transform industries and governance, the balance between automation and human judgment remains a persisting challenge. Today's webinar will explore the legal frameworks, compliance requirements, and actionable strategies to ensure responsible AI deployment. Before we proceed, I'd like to extend my gratitude to our speakers, attendees, and the IPBA for making this event possible. Let's make the most of this opportunity to learn, engage, and collaborate. Thank you.
We thank warmly our fellow chair Jack Lee for this introduction and for introducing the program of the day. Well, lawyers use AI system in compliance with principle of legality, fairness, transparency, and accountability. And of course, technologies must comply with applicable regulation. And the use of AI shall be aimed at improving the quality of legal services, but without compromising rights and trust of clients, as we will discuss. In general terms, AI as a term does not refer to specific techniques, rather to a general objective of tools used for carrying out in an automated way activities which are undertaken by humans. And in this sense, AI is a term encompassing all the techniques products use for enhancing human capabilities. For example, processing content of a document written in a natural language, for instance. And of course, there is a duty of competence, as we will touch upon, because the informed use of AI requires lawyers to develop technological skills. And given the rapidity of AI technology evolution, being familiar with different market tools and up to date on innovation developments is, of course, material. And that requires constant monitoring new AI solution on one side, second, assessing their suitability for the context, and third, verifying they comply with regulatory standards. So in the use of AI, the centrality of human decision remains an inescapable element, and lawyers should critically evaluate the results produced by AI technologies, ensuring how the processing of data is affected by algorithms. So in this fireside chat, we will discuss how lawyers can stay in control of AI-assisted work, make sure decisions meet legal and ethical standards, and avoid common pitfalls coming from rely too much or perhaps too little on automation. So that from a legal perspective can be divided into three major issues. Alignment, and this reference how AI aligns with impact the existing framework for legal practice, as I said, in terms of accountability, accuracy, but also in terms of confidentiality, privacy, and data safety, for example. The second, ethics, legal ethics, rules of professional conduct of bars, law societies, whether they can be distinguished from a more general notion of ethics. And third, explainability, as referred to generating an understanding of how AI works, or how to address issues like, for example, the so-called black box on how AI produce a result. So you may have heard when a US attorney filed a legal brief written with the help of generative AI platform ChatGPT a couple of years ago. That document included citations to a series of legal cases that seemingly offer precedent supporting his client's position. But there was only one problem. As the judge in the case discovered, 6 of those cases did not exist. Instead, they were invented by the online tool. And this was only one of the several high-profile incidents. Nowadays, they are called hallucinations for lawyers using this technology. And yet, many legal experts believe generative AI is also changing the legal profession in ways that we will aid lawyers and their clients. So we do not have to be afraid of it. So to learn more about how AI is expected to transform the legal profession as well as other important industry trends, as Jack said, we're happy to enjoy the contribution of a real expert in this field that Jack has already introduced to you, Eunice Tan. Eunice leads the legal operation at Execo, supporting its M&A and driving the company's strategic growth and initiative. And Execo is a service provider which acquires legal service providers and transform traditional FTE-based business models into generative AI-powered managed contract services. So Eunice has an extensive experience in corporate and commercial law, including contract management. So she's definitely a person who knows a lot about AI in the legal transactional sector. So now, without further ado, I would like to break the ice by asking Eunice about the following, and I would start with the big picture. So Eunice, how are you seeing AI actually show up in legal work right now? So not just in theory, but in practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo, and hello, everybody. It's great to be here. So let's dive in and take a few steps back, and let's do a quick recap of what's been going on in the last few years. So you have late 2022, ChatGPT was launched, and by 2023, ChatGPT blew up. This generative AI technology it has can create new content by learning patterns from vast data sets. And you could instruct it and interact with it as if you were talking to a person using your natural language. So by 2024, everybody, including lawyers, were saying, this is amazing. We need to adopt this technology. It's going to boost productivity. It's going to cut costs. And now we're here in 2025, which is shaping up to be an important year because people are now moving beyond the AI hype. They are now becoming a little bit more discerning about what value AI can really bring to the business. How do you measure it? How do we optimize it? Where do we really need this technology in our business? What training, what skills, what talent do we need? And importantly, are we using this technology responsibly? So here, the present sort of landscape is at least in the legal industry, is the conversation is shifting from, can we use it, to how do we use it responsibly, effectively, and strategically to achieve real business value, and what are the long-term implications? Now, in 2023, there was a global survey of around 200 law firms representing around 100,000 legal professionals. And as early as that period, you already have 51% of the 203 surveyed firms implementing AI-based tools. 12% were actively exploring, 37% weren't implementing. So as early as 2023, you already saw that AI is being used in law firms. And then in the US in mid 2024, 79% of the legal professionals who were surveyed are already adopting AI. So it's very widely used already. And in the recent 2025 Thomson Reuters services report in professional services, it reports that Gen AI has now become pervasive. Half of all the professionals, and these include legal, tax and accounting, corporate risk, now they've been using AI. So basically, we're saying AI is really quite, everyone's using it. A lot of people are using it already. Now, to answer Ricardo's question, where are we seeing the Gen AI tools being widely used? Now we are seeing it used to automate repetitive, low risk, and time-consuming tasks. Tasks that are information heavy. This is the most widely used, application of Gen AI. So here we have reviewing documents, highlighting risks. We have summarizing documents. We have legal research, drafting briefs, drafting memos, drafting contracts. So in the Thomson Reuters 2025 report, these were highlighted as the most often used in the Gen AI tools. Now, obviously, we know that there are much more advanced capabilities of the AI tools, but this is answering the question of this is what's widely being used right now in the legal industry. And one thing I thought was interesting in the 2025 Thomson Reuters report, which I felt that this is important for law firms to take note of, is that the report said that part of the increased usage of AI was partly driven by clients. The clients saying 59% of corporate law departments that were surveyed said that they want their outside law firms to use Gen AI. And I thought this was interesting for us to bring out today, because there seems to be this sentiment that that's also what clients are looking for. And that's something I think that law firms right now who are not yet adopting these AI tools should consider. And in terms of the kind of tools that law firms are using, could be the Thomson Reuters Co-Counsel, Microsoft Copilot, you have Google Gemini, you have software like Harvey, Leah, Legora, and even ChatGPT in some contexts. Some law firms have their own proprietary software. So that's what I would answer to that first question, Ricardo.
Thank you, Eunice. That's absolutely right. And I would, yeah, so there are so many possible applications. And you mentioned Thomson Reuters, and I was even thinking about, for example, IP, trademark, and patent searches, or due diligence over IP, just to add another area. Let's move on, and I would like to ask you now how, I mean, many lawyers, I mean, are using it, but many lawyers as well are unsure how much they can really trust AI.
Yep.
So what does, in your view, human oversight look like in a practical day-to-day legal context, Eunice?
So, lawyers, we are really creatures of habit. We have a preferred way on how we want to do law, right? Some of us, we like doing it manually. We like writing things down to absorb complex ideas. We like typing it down. We like mapping things on the board. Even back in private practice, many years ago, we had a boss, one of our partners wanted us to use iPads only. And that was pretty uncomfortable for all of us, but we did it anyway. And of course, we still printed, but only for a final review. And now we're faced with this challenge of living and practicing in this era of Gen AI. And as a general counsel of one of our software partners said to me, we can't be a 1993 lawyer if we're practicing in 2025. That's just the reality of it, right? So, you know, just a quick aside, in this 2023 global survey that I mentioned earlier, there was a somewhat surprising finding that despite the high concern of the respondents for the legal liability using Gen AI, there was a really low concern about AI explainability. So that was back in 2023, and you can see that people were not so familiar with AI at that point because they weren't concerned about AI explainability. Now we're more familiar about this black box problem, which you highlighted in your introduction, which basically we don't know how AI came up with the answer. We know what input we gave, we know what output we gave, but the process to arrive at that is very opaque. So that's the black box problem. So what does human oversight look like, as you ask? Broadly, this just means ensuring that there is a human monitoring, supervising, and reviewing an AI's output or decisions. And this goes back to the fact that any AI tool you're using is just a tool. You can treat it as a junior assistant, right, which always needs a human being to oversee. So you can't just rely on it, right? It's not, you can't just treat it like an unsupervised intern. So I can briefly describe a model that can be used for human oversight. And this assumes that your law firm has already properly vetted an appropriate AI tool for your practice. So there's a model that you can use with like 3 interconnected levels. And it's easy for lawyers to understand this because it mirrors the traditional hierarchy of a law firm, with a junior associate, with a partner reviewing the junior associate's work, and then ultimately there's the managing partner overseeing the entire business. It parallels that, so it's easy to understand. You have tier 1 of the model, which is the operator, right? The operator of the actual AI. This is the front line of the defense and the most critical layer. And every employee using an AI tool should be trained to adopt a never trust, always verify approach. Never trust, always verify approach. This means that all AI-generated outputs, such as legal research, contract clauses, data analysis, they have to be cross-referenced with the traditional and trustworthy, reliable methods. For example, cross-check it with Westlaw or LexisNexis, or in Singapore statutes online, or in the equivalent in your home jurisdiction. So, and for every document drafted, you need to look at it, you need to review it, right? And then you should also be able to log. The model also, recommends that you should be able to log your AI activities so that there can be some sort of monitoring where you're using it, how you're using it, and you can also track errors. So that's the first tier, which is the operator, human in the loop tier. That's what they describe it. The second tier is the supervisory level. It's a 4 eyes principle. Again, not unlike a normal law firm, a traditional law firm. Here is the supervisory layer for reviewing the work products to ensure compliance with established protocols. This could be the supervising partner or a team lead. And you have to adopt here a risk-based protocol. So not all AI assisted work should be scrutinized, right? There are low risk kind of tasks like summarizing or drafting or brainstorming a memo. Medium risk tasks are like first drafts of contracts, while the high risk tasks are actually the final advice to the clients or court filing. So you have to adopt a more stricter scrutiny for higher risk kind of tasks. And these supervisors in this tier 2 should also conduct random audits to ensure that the AI tools are being used properly. So that's the tier 2. And lastly, the tier 3 is the oversight committee, like the mission control, where you have a governance body responsible for the strategic oversight of AI tools across the firm. So they review the data that's been gathered by the tier 1 and tier 2, see patterns of errors. They update their firm's AI policy, which assumes that you have one. They monitor the AI model, whether it's evolving in the way you want it to. And they also, handle like incidents where there's AI, where the AI has some errors. So this is, the 3-tiered oversight kind of model, which you can use to continuously have oversight over your AI tools. It sounds a little overwhelming, but the good news is you don't need to do this alone, basically. If you have the capability to do it, you can build it in-house. You can, if you have the expertise, or you can outsource it. You can outsource it to AI experts. So that's basically an approach.
Thank you, Eunice. I entirely subscribe what you're saying, and I was thinking, even for low risk operations, like for example, translation of documents. I remember last month, my team we use, I'm not gonna make the name of the company, but an AI software for translating documents, very famous, that everybody knows it. And we translated a salmon complaint, and I immediately noticed when I double checked that well, the word from that was from Italian to English. The word plaintiff in Italian is attore, like actor, and the AI generative AI translated with the word actor, so not plaintiff. So if that ended up to the client, probably we would have been questioned. So definitely oversight is material, and of course it's part of the game. So there's a lot of focus on efficiency, but from your experience, I would like to hear from you, what are the real risks if oversight is then weak or missing?
So yeah, as you have mentioned, the human oversight part is really critically important. You know, weak or missing human oversight carries significant risks, and it undermines the integrity of the legal profession and can potentially lead to severe consequences for the lawyer. Some of these risks, let's talk about some of these risks. Hallucinations and inaccuracies. So we all know that AI, as you mentioned in your introduction, that AI tends to provide inaccurate answers with a high degree of confidence, or generates false information. And the case that you mentioned in the US against the airline, that is a perfect case, very, very often cited, a very famous case where really the ChatGPT just invented all those cases. And the lawyer, the plaintiff's lawyer was saying, I didn't know ChatGPT did that, right? And that's what prompted in the US the professional rules to say, like, you know, you can't, misunderstanding AI technology is not an excuse. It's not a defense. You have to verify all your cases. And that leads to also another important point that you mentioned, that there, you have ethical and professional violations risk when if human oversight is weak or missing. So the American Bar Association model rules require a lawyer to be competent, right, to represent clients with competency. And they also, later on said that this also means technological competence. And what they explain is that, you're not required to be a technologist, but you have to understand the tools or consult someone who does. And I looked into this, and actually only 2 states make it mandatory for technology-specific continuing legal education. You have Florida and North Carolina, and the rest really just require you to, to just comply with this as best as you can. And so you have that. You also have the risk of the breach of client confidentiality, which is one of our professional duties. If you input data that are sensitive, that have sensitive client information in it, into a general purpose or an insecure AI system, you have cybersecurity and data protection risks for that. And then another risk that I think worth mentioning is the bias and discrimination risk. AI has the tendency to perpetuate certain biases, and if you don't check it, that can lead to skewed or discriminatory outcomes in sensitive legal areas. One interesting case is in the in the U.S. criminal courts. They were using this risk assessment tool to assess the likelihood that a defendant was going to reoffend, or recidivism risk. And this tool informs critical decisions for the court about sentencing, parole, pretrial release. And an investigation revealed that there were significant racial disparities in the algorithm's error rates. So the tool was nearly twice as likely to falsely flag Black defendants who didn't reoffend as people who have the high risk of reoffending. Conversely, white defendants who were reoffending were twice as likely to be misclassified as low risk. So the flawed outcome of the tool reflected the training data that had embedded racial bias in it. So that was something that was flagged. And as you mentioned, this is, in the Gen AI, in AI, you have the black box problem, where it's difficult to understand how an AI system makes decisions. It's basically a black box. You can see the input, you can see the output, but the process in between is opaque. And this is why human oversight is absolutely critical. There are other risks, like you have over-reliance on an AI tool, diminished human judgment, and of course, as mentioned in the airline case, you have liability risks. You can also be on the hook for legal malpractice.
Well, you touch upon so many big issues. Each of them would deserve a separate
Separate
session, but
session.
yeah. But let's get to macro. So we have two macro areas. We have internal oversight by law firm. That's a duty for each and every law firm and
Yeah.
lawyers. But you touch upon also the regulatory side. So in this respect, you cited the ABA model rules. So we also have professional regulation and ethics code of conduct for lawyers that are enhanced, or there's at least a debate whether they should be enhanced or not. In this sense, may I make mention also in Europe we have a body that is called CCBE, that is the European Bar Council, similar to the AVA, where they issue like model rules for national bars of members of the EU. And the CCB issued, of course, guidelines about the use of AI, and especially to ensure that the use of AI tools in the justice system, something we have not touched yet, and law enforcement is appropriately controlled and regulated, and that the regulation reflects the specificities of this system. So in the sense that regulation must respect right to a fair trial, right to a human judge, and the rules governing the use of AI tools are grounded in a clear set of ethical principles, such as respect of human rights, transparency, accountability, as we said, and of course, upholding of the rule of law. And these principles are turned into use case specific operational rules and guidelines. This is also a recommendation into the justice system or law enforcement to make sure they do not jeopardize the right to a fair trial. So there are also guidelines from the several regulatory or authorities around the world addressing the use of AI and generative AI. So now let's get back to practical matters. And of course, you have worked with law firms. You have a substantial experience with the legal departments trying to adopt AI. So what have you seen, if I may ask, go well, and where have people instead stumbled?
Well, disclosure, it's more legal departments than law firms.
Okay.
At the time I worked in the law firms, there was no whisper of AI at that point, but here are the lessons that I've learned. The things that go well, the companies or the firms that adopt AI successfully are digitally ready. They have digital readiness, and I'll talk about that more when we talk about where it doesn't go well. You also have a lot of leadership support, people championing this change, this cultural transformation in your firm. So where people have stumbled is a more interesting angle, because that's really the opposite of what I've mentioned. It's the unsuccessful adoption of AI is rarely because of the technology chosen. It's the implementation that's where things go wrong. right? So when I talk about, digital readiness, data readiness gap, these AI tools work best when you have clean, structured data, right? And that's the foundation on any successful implementation. But if you have legal documents that are existing in formats that are, that are not clean, basically, or they're not easily structured or read by OCR, that can really delay implementation. So because you need to remediate, you need to clean it before you can even do an adoption of the AI tool properly. Then you have the human element, right? Technology transformation, it was very, very nicely mentioned in this article, is ultimately a human transformation. If organizations don't invest enough time training, communicating, and aligning incentives, they often find their AI tools are unused and underutilized, and these are very big investments by firms, financially. So this is something that can go wrong. And the last thing that where people often stumbled is that successful implementations work best if you have a clearly defined problem that you are trying to address, rather than just implementing technology, rather than saying, oh no, we just need AI, we need AI. No, it's not as effective as when you say, no, what we really need is we need to reduce our contract review time by 50%, or we need to double the review time of our M&A due diligence work from 2 weeks to 1 week. Then that you define the problem and then you select the appropriate tech, that really increases the chance of a very successful of AI adoption. And I think I also mentioned that the good news is you're not alone in this. With the rise of Gen AI, you also have new jobs, new functions, and so companies like our company, for example, they can help you. You have people who help you if you have a gap. You have AI experts to help you. So
yeah, that's very interesting, Eunice. Thank you for your insight. And yeah, so that's implementing the software is also, it's one of the major issue. And I'm thinking, what about? No, it's not a question for you. I'm just thinking. Is for example, let's say lawyers deal in commerce law, trade law departments. They may have another issue which arises from frequent regulatory changes. In the recent world of commerce, tariffs are changing all the time. So think about the difficulty of lawyers advising clients on trade, on custom law, about implementing, about giving proper and current advice when tariffs are changing all the time. That's a nightmare for companies and for lawyers as well. Okay, let's move on. Or you want to? No.
well, no, I guess I wanted to say that I know I answered that most the Gen AI tools being used now are really mostly for automated repetitive tasks, but
Yeah.
when you mention all those tariffs, and the changing rules, the trend now is really more on paid specific industry specific tools, because the Gen AI tools are so advanced that they can actually help you track very
Real
quick
time.
quick moving regulations as and when they change, so that you can also advise your clients accordingly.
Okay, that's very interesting and comforting. Thank you, Eunice. So let's now switch to the accountability, responsibility side. What are your takes on that? If AI makes a mistake in a contract or a risk assessment, who's ultimately on the hook? Who takes responsibility for that?
Well, Ricardo, the answer is always simple. The lawyer is always on the hook. If you've used AI drafting a contract or it makes an error and you didn't catch it, like the translation from an actor to actor, The lawyer or the law firm is ultimately responsible. This is our obligation to our clients. There are instances where you have AI software providers who guarantee a certain output, right? And it's conceivable that maybe they can share some liability, but more often than not, these companies will have strong disclaimers, limitations of liability. And so yes, we've been talking about so many of the risks, and we need human oversight. But I do want to make sure that the message is still that the power and the benefits of AI to human productivity, to human efficiency, far outweighs its risks. So it's still worth using. I just want to say that.
No, definitely. I totally
Don't scare
agree.
people away.
I totally agree. And but of course, as you said, lawyers are on the hook, and they are accountable not only for what they do, but also for what their staff do, as we touch upon. So if a paralegal or an associate is not properly, there is no proper control over the work of staff, then lawyers remain responsible, and that's undeniable. Although personally, I'm not entirely convinced that lawyers should be always 100% accountable, but I'm a lawyer, so I shouldn't say that. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, and I have another question for you. Some lawyers feel pressure to use AI just to keep up. How should legal teams evaluate which tools to trust and which ones to avoid for now? And by the way, there's a question on the chat exactly on this. Well, more or less, they are asking, can you share what is the common AI used for law firms today? I think you have already answered before to the question by mentioning some of these tools commonly used. But how should legal teams evaluate which tools to trust? That's the big question.
There are a couple of things that you can do. You could read peer reviews. You could read scientific or academic journals if you have the interest or the time to understand that. You can try and ask for demos to understand the tool itself. So make sure the tools are easy for you to understand. I would avoid the lure of the marketing language of these AI tool companies. They promise everybody, all these software, they will promise you the world. But the reality is those promises are more aspirational than actual. So like what I mentioned earlier, I think what's a good starting point is for you to define the problem. So you read enough to kind of understand, okay, this is what AI can do, and then define the problem. What do you really need for your business? Like again, what I mentioned, we are a small firm, and we need a tool that will double our M&A review, so we can turn over much faster. And a general counsel friend also told me the other day, his rule of thumb when using Gen AI tools, if you're not paying for it, then it's probably not worth using, because that means you and the data are the product, right? And it's probably not safe either.
Yeah.
So again, couple of ways to do it. You're not alone here. You have consultants, you have advisors, you have companies like us that can help you. That can help you implement AI, whether it's to help configure it or integrate it. So the point is, you don't need to do it all yourself. You just need to know enough. And there are roles out there and jobs that help provide the human oversight part.
Right. Yeah. So on one side, we can avail of reviews, of surveys, and so forth. And on the other end, word of mouth is always still.
That's still helpful.
Asking your colleagues, maybe from other firms, what they. Yeah, that's marketing, by the way, for companies. Yeah.
There is a blog that is very helpful. It's called The Artificial Lawyer.
Oh, okay.
And they publish the latest in AI legal tech. So just every time something launches, they will read it. They will publish something, and that's something that can be helpful as well. So you can see what's going on in the market and the new products coming out.
Interesting. Thank you, Eunice. So for lawyers who are just getting started, what are one or two concrete things they can do to introduce oversight into their AI workflows, in your view?
You know, this is a good question, and I think this one of the simplest thing that you can do if you're a law firm is to have an AI acceptable use policy, and it can be just one page. You know, it's basic. An AI acceptable use policy is basically the do's and the don'ts guidelines to your firm about the use of an AI. For example, it would say like, okay, do understand that these tools are, you know, useful, but they're not a substitute for your human judgment, that they are prone to hallucinations, that they need to be verified by a human. You know, do verify their each response as accurate and appropriate. Make sure they're not violating any intellectual property rights, or they are consistent with the firm's policies and applicable laws. Do not, you know, do not represent work generated by AI as your own original work. Do not use Gen AI tools that are not vetted by your IT or approved by your firm. Do not integrate any Gen AI tools into your business or firm without first a prior written consent by your IT and your supervisor. And usually these policies would also talk about, you know, the consequences of your violation, you know, disciplinary action, termination, legal action. So really kind of to kind of hone in how important this is. And if you want to level up, you know, you could even build an even stronger framework and have a proper AI policy. So
Yeah.
an AI policy is a broader, high-level framework. It talks about the strategic direction and governing principles for the use of AI. It would have stuff like your strategic goals of, you know, what's your vision, objective about integrating AI into your operations. Then you talk about the ethical guidelines, overarching principles of fairness, transparency, non-discrimination, confidentiality, accountability. And then you also, you know, ensure that you comply with data privacy and regulatory compliance with professional rules and conduct. Talks about governance and oversight. You'll have a committee, an oversight committee. Talks about audit and monitoring. It talks about the training and education of the staff on AI. These policies would also talk about security, cybersecurity, risk management, and then also talks about client communication. How do we disclose this AI use to our clients? And these AI policies and AI acceptable use policies, there are templates online. Just Google. You know, you can just Google samples, and look, Ricardo's doing it now. So you can basically, there's just obviously just, you know, you don't adopt it just as it is in the template. You gotta make sure you modify it for your business. But there are some tools online that you can take a look and gives you an idea of how you can roll out one.
Right. That's that. Well, I personally believe a policy, especially for a large firm, is definitely advisable to have an AI policy, but not just for large firm, for mid-sized firms as
Yeah.
well. In terms of you touch upon client communication. We haven't explored this area yet. So how would you recommend explaining AI oversight responsibility to clients or even internal stakeholders, let's say, who assume, because they often assume tech just works, but it's it's not just like that, as we know, as we thoroughly discuss.
Yeah, well, you know, the reality is, you know, it doesn't just work. You know, it's not an electric fan that you can just plug in, switch on, and it works, right? These AI tools really just work their magic when they are properly implemented, when they are properly configured and integrated into your business. Otherwise, you might just be wasting your investment and your time, and you're missing out on all the productivity and the gains that you want. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, let's still in terms of risk. I was thinking we have our legal team using generative AI, and as partners, we're supposed to oversight their work. But do you have any suggestions? For example, what can be some early indicators that a legal team's use of AI might be exposing them to an unnecessary risk?
I think, yeah, I think an early indicator is, you don't have a AI policy in place of any sort, and there's no consensus on how it's being used. So nobody knows. They're like, maybe she's using it, maybe they're not. And then for me, another telltale sign is like when you speak to your lawyers who are using it or to each other, like nobody really knows what this AI tool is. Nobody can even talk about it. They're like, "Hey, so where does it have any errors?" And everyone's like, I don't know. That for me is like, okay, this is a bit scary.
Red flag, yeah.
Yeah. Another red flag is if the tool is free. If the tool is
Oh
free,
yeah,
you're
oh
not
yeah.
paying for it. What does that mean? So that's, I think those are little warning signs that you can
Yeah,
look out for.
Eunice, that's a very good point. For example, there's the translator tool I was talking about before. I'm not gonna make it the name, but there are two versions, and the free one and the one on payment, on subscription.
And can you see the
The
difference in the
Yeah,
quality?
no, the problem is that with the free one, the AI software can use your content, the input that you are providing
Yeah,
to the AI tools to develop its generative
yeah,
AI database. If you use a subscription, then they cannot use it. It's your content. For a law firm, this is a gigantic difference in terms of privacy and confidentiality of
yeah.
client, because hey, if I'm using like say this tool for translating a pleading, and then someone else can see some of the content of my pleading
No, no.
in
Yeah,
another.
that's
So yeah, thank you for raising this point, because this is also, I'm not suggesting that we should necessarily pay, but think about the difference in terms of risk for
it's what
lawyers.
it means. Yeah, it's what it
Yeah.
means. So because these software companies, they do need to spend money in order to make sure that their AI systems are secure. I mean, if really there's no choice and you really want to use an AI tool and it's for free, I would say be very careful and anonymize the information and don't put anything that's sensitive or even remotely, confidential. So
Yeah. And in general terms, Eunice, in terms of legal tasks, of course, you mentioned that most tasks are low risk, that can be automated, but not every task can be, of course. The
yeah,
human component will never be substituted by the AI. That's at least what I believe. But there are specific kind of legal tasks that you, in like in general terms, you believe should never be fully automated, or
yeah.
if you can make some examples, maybe.
Yeah, so there are things that, the AI can't reliably do well yet, compared to a lawyer. So for example, you have, complex negotiations of, for example, contracts, because that's what we do a lot. So the AI tools are really good for they can review the first few rounds. But past a certain point, when things get a little bit more complex, definitely that's when you need the lawyer to be very heavily involved. So again, it's a tool, right? It'll help you
Mhm.
get to that second position, saving you a number of hours. Then you can be much more productive. And you can't automate tasks requiring your human judgment. Can't do advocacy. Like, AI can't do that advocacy. You can't, stuff that require empathy, creativity, stuff that makes us uniquely human. You can't fully automate it because AI is not a human being. Yeah, it's just a tool. So
Right. Yeah, and if I can tag along, and this is also, I mean, the same answer can apply for the administration of justice. Here we're not talking about it, but there's a consensus that judges could avail of use of
yeah,
AI for small claims primarily, like, I don't know, car accidents claims, very simple small insurance claims. But of course, an AI could never will never substitute a judge on more complex cases. So we can avail of AI also in the administration of justice, but just to release judges from very repetitive small claims work on that.
I think there
Yeah.
are some jurisdictions, Ricardo, that I mean, spending I can't cite anything with particularity, but there are some justice systems that are more advanced in that not just small claims, but it's very limited use. That's the trend. Like it's all limited use. You can use it, but only for particular things, and never even close to the what the judges actually do when they're meeting out decisions. So.
Yeah. And just getting back to law firms, just a very generic question. Maybe you don't want to answer, but I will. In terms of there's always a discussion between a large firm versus small firms. If whether AI we can say AI can be primarily used by large firms, or small firm can level the playing field by availing of more capabilities by using generative AI and offer more services in that sense, as I said, level the playing field with mid-size and large firms. I don't know. Do you have any takeaway on this?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think
Probably
Gen AI,
both.
yeah, Gen AI is helpful for all sizes of
Yeah.
firms in different ways. So, as you mentioned, for small firms, your practice of 5 people, and in the past, you were never, you never had the chance to pitch for bigger work that needed 10 lawyers, 20 lawyers, and now with Gen AI tool, you can. There's a possibility that you can, because even though you're 5, you can do the work for 10 because of this AI tool that you're doing. And if you implement it properly, that can make you very powerful as a small law firm. You can punch above your weight. For big firms, the world is their oyster with the Gen AI. With their deep resources, they can make their own proprietary software using tons of their data from their libraries from before, and have this tool that they can service their clients with much more efficiency and productivity and accuracy as ever before. So it gives them the opportunity to be at the forefront of the future of legal work, and it also gives them the opportunity, if they play this right, to raise the standards of legal practice.
Yeah, so I believe. Yeah. Last takeaway, Eunice. This is a very simple question. How do you stay current on AI tools without getting overwhelmed by hype or vendor noise? You said the AI gen is like an oyster world, and you're absolutely right. But of course, we are bombarded every day by offers, by proposals, marketing, publicity.
Yeah, I mean, I touched on this earlier a little bit, which
Yeah.
but basically, as lawyers, knowledge is power, right? I mean, in law school, you didn't know anything about tort until 1 month later. You know everything about tort. It's just it's we use what we're good at. We're good at reading and learning. But no one is asking us to be tech experts. I'm not a tech expert, but you can learn the basics, and enough to ask the right questions, and enough to identify the gaps, enough to know what to do in order to take your practice and take your firm to the next level, to the future. And as I mentioned, you can use blogs, like the artificial lawyer blog, that you can keep abreast of developments.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Well, thank you, Eunice. This is terrific indeed.
Thank you. Thank
Um,
you for having me.
yeah. Well, with that, we conclude our panel session, I would say. We still have a few minutes, but unless anyone has any additional question, if not, with that, we conclude our panel session. So I would like to thank warmly Eunice Tan for sharing her experience in this area, for the insight provided, and the terrific discussion about the session topic today. We touch upon several aspects to consider within the context of the AI use, the legal profession in performing AI legal related services. And I wish to thank you all for participating, and of course the IPBA Secretariat and Randa for setting up this wonderful fireside chat. This has been an event, as our chair Jack Lee said, the first online event of the newly formed AI ad hoc committee within the IPBA. If any one of you is interested to join our committee, please write to me or to Jack or to Matt Takeshi, that is our the other vice chair of the committee, and I myself vice chair of the AI ad hoc committee. Well, we look forward to future similar session about AI topic of interest, and as our ad hoc AI committee, we're also planning to organize a session during the upcoming 2026 IPBA annual conference in Delhi, when we will meet all in person. So stay tuned. And with that, I conclude the session. Thank you all again. Take care and stay safe. Thank you.